Oh, hey, it's me. That nervous poop that your horse left on the horse trailer that's now frozen there because it was -9 degrees when you took him to the vet and you thought you could get away without putting extra bedding down. I'll be here until spring. Well, speaking of trailers, today's episode is all going to be about horse hauling 101 with our professional equine transport. Whether you own a trailer or you think that your horse is going to be at your farm forever until the day they die, trust me, y'all need to know what an emergency horse hauler can do for you, and to have everybody's name and number in your emergency contact list for when something happens at your farm. Stick with us, even though our audio quality was a little off due to some technical difficulties, but the information is invaluable because you're listening to Rochester Trail Riders.
We are here tonight at Easton's again, so if you hear anything in the background, I'm going to try to get rid of it, but, the place is rowdy, and we love Pam, so something might happen in here. But tonight we're hanging out with good old Jen from Second Wind Stable Transport, I think is the proper way to do that. How are you doing tonight, Jen?
I'm great. How are you?
Fabulous.
Probably better since you bought me a drink.
Drinks do help. That's why we sit here. Loosens it up just a bit, gets us going. But I invited you out tonight because I wanted to talk about professional equine transport and understanding if you don't have horse and trailer, or even if you do, because I've called you in the past and I'm perfectly capable of getting my horse from point A to point B unless I'm on a road trip to Indiana.
Yeah.
Or I just don't have time to deal with it. And there's several of you guys in the area, you and Mary, from City View.
Yep.
I've used both of you, and thank God we have professional transport in this area.
Yeah.
You make our lives much better. And I wanted to have a discussion about what makes you a professional transporter and what are a few things that we can expect from hiring you for our services. What can people do to make sure that we have the correct, we're ready for you when you show up.
Absolutely.
And that kind of things. So we'll just jump right into it. And how in the world did you ever get into this? Because I've known you since you were teaching EMT kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How did you go from you save people's lives to let's go transport horses?
Well, I've been around horses most of my life. My mother had horses, rode all over the Genesee Valley, all over Avon and Dream Valley, through her childhood and teenage and early adult years. She actually got rid of her last horses when she was pregnant with me because she figured it just wasn't a good time to have a new baby. And she also had a mare with a foal at its side. So she just decided it was time to raise a kid. But, she got me into horses quite young. And for any of you that have been in this area for any length of time and knew Judge Houston, my first pony was his Angel. And that she was not. I was on the ground more than I was in the saddle. I think she taught me how to fall off. So
those are the best ponies.
Oh, she was rotten and she was awesome at the same time.
Some of my favorite things to watch online are kids getting yeeted off.
Yeah, like just right over the shoulders and down on the ground. But they were always kind of in the sideline. All through school I had horses, and then I sold my horse when I was going to college to another local horsewoman, Jean Batesing Farms in Caledonia, and she retired and lived out her life there. And then I moved with my now ex-husband, but out to West Sparta, and I was like, well, if I'm going to live out here, there's one condition. I need to have a horse, because I wasn't really sure what else I was going to do out there. So they kind of came back into my world. And then we opened up Second Wind Stable in Scottsville and started boarding, and we had 18 horses. And there was just a need. There was a need for horses going into equine clinics for things that just weren't great to do on the farm. X-rays, minor procedures that
Geldings,
just they needed to go in. So it started with little local things, people moving barn to barn, between Monroe, Livingston, Wayne, Ontario County, like nothing really big.
Yeah.
And all those little clients started building into big clients. And then I started, okay, well, maybe like Virginia will be my furthest south, and, Maine will be kind of up into New England. And then all of a sudden I was in Louisiana and Texas and all over the place. So, like, that's kind of the reader.
And that escalated fast.
It did escalate fast. But like you said, there's a lot of people with their own equipment, but for whatever reason, some of my clients have beautiful equipment, but they also teach or they also breed, and they weigh the cost of taking themselves out of that job for the day or for a weekend, depending on where they're shipping a horse, versus hiring someone to do it.
That right there is exactly why I've hired you on several occasions, because for me to actually leave my day job, come home, get my whole rig up and running, spend all that time, like, that's what you do. That's what I'm paying you for.
Yeah.
It is much more cost efficient and time efficient.
Absolutely.
And you being an actual professional, we'll get into this as to what makes you a professional on it, is takes the weight off of me. Like, I know your equipment's in good repair and ready to go, and that you're going to treat them like it was your own horse.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest components of it, I think, is understanding that everybody's horse is $1 million horse.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It
was a free rescue. It's whoever is getting it, it's their $1 million horse.
Oh, that's a great attitude.
So, I mean, you have to do it. But, the other thing, too, I don't think people realize is, especially with the emergency runs, you may have your own truck and trailer, and it may be in fine working order, and it may be perfect road conditions. But sometimes when you get to the point that you've been dealing with your vet on the farm for so many hours, and now you've made that call that you need to go to more definitive hospital care, your nerves are shot, you're tired, you haven't eaten, you haven't showered, you've been walking a colicky horse in the snow for 12 hours, and your nerves are fried.
God, I didn't even think about that, and you're right.
Yeah, and, sometimes it's just a good decision that you don't get behind the wheel because you're worried about the cargo behind you.
When we first bought our farm, I had my big Tennessee walking horse, Goliath, and I had my little Arabian, Hobby, who I got married on them.
Yeah,
that's my marriage. I got married in October. Hobby blew out her knee by that January, and I had to put her down by February is when I stopped doing treatment. And we took her up to Rush Pet Cemetery. And getting to the pet cemetery was one thing. You're trailering a live horse. Everything's okay. You have not made that decision to put her down. And we walked her to her gravesite and put her down. That drive home, I should not have been behind a wheel.
Absolutely.
My husband should not have been behind a wheel. If I had any inkling, I was literally 3 months into owning a farm and a rig. 3 months. If I had known there was a service like yours, I would have hired you 100 times over, because that drive home was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I couldn't see. I was crying so hard.
And I mean, it's a huge emotional aspect. And, I think one of the biggest times that sticks out in my head was during COVID. We were still hauling, and the runs to Cornell, Cornell wasn't letting the owners into the hospital. So, here I am picking up at the farm, and, they're trying to decide, am I saying goodbye?
Right.
Because there was no point in them going. They couldn't go in. And, just thinking of, these owners trying to make that drive and the state of mind that they're in at that point, like, it's just maybe not a great decision. Not that, I enjoy seeing or having a sick horse in the trailer either. They're horses. We all, we're in this business because we loved them.
That emotional detachment, though.
And it is. It's different when it's not yours. And also, I was in EMS and public safety for over 20 years prior to this. So I think that kind of pops into my head. And, kind of like when we first got here and we were saying, a horse ambulance. Well, that's kind of how I think of it, that I have to get them quickly, safely, legally from point A to point B and not have the emotional But it's a small horse world. Like, we all know each other. We know our
Right.
horses. We see
You do,
pictures.
yeah, you're going to feel bad. about
Yeah.
that. But yeah, as you said, you came from that EMT kind of world
Yeah.
where that attachment's still there. You've just had that training to compartmentalize.
Yeah, it just has to go over there until
Until I can deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's funny is nowadays I have that ability to do that better.
Yes.
But man, 3 months into owning your own farm and rig and everything, I do not have that capability. Now I can be like, okay, look, you will have time to destroy yourself later.
Yes, we have a job to do right now.
We have to do this right this second. And as soon as you pull it in, you turn that key off, you can lose it. But until then, don't. So one question I have is, what makes you a professional transport? What qualifications? What makes you legal on the road to transport horses?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is if you're doing this for hire, if you're making money doing horse transport or really livestock transport or whatever you're transporting, you have to have a DOT number.
So many people don't.
No, and I see all these posts like, hey, I'm going to get a horse for myself in Indiana, and I have an extra spot on my trailer,
Right.
all the way there and all the way back, or whatever. And what it entails as far as being professional is we have DOT certification, which means that we have to file reports. We have to prove hours on the road. We have to have commercial insurance. And it's a good checks and balances of, are these people safe? Is their equipment good? Is everything up to date? We have to submit reports with our trips. How long were we on the road for how many days per week? And they're checking, are we fatigued?
Yeah.
Really,
Make sure that, great, you just drove 14 hours to go pick up your horse. Are you doing a turn and burn?
Right.
Your 14 hours is your limit. You're not coming back.
Let's face it, as horse people, we do a lot of turning and burning because time is money. And, for the backyard horse person, they often have jobs and families and kids outside, so they are turning and burning. Mm-hmm. So, the big thing I tell people is, oh, well, I found a friend that can do it. And I'm like, hey, that's great. Good luck. But what you need to remember is with us having commercial insurance,
Something happens.
yeah. And let's face it, not everybody's great on the road. And I worry more about all the people around me. Everybody says, how do you drive in the winter? I don't really so much worry about myself because I know when I need to speed up or slow down or stop.
Right. You're comfortable with your rig.
Yeah, other people don't know, like, it's going to take me a little bit longer to stop. I can't just slam on the brakes and throw a mom and baby around in that box, Or just the sheer weight of it. I have 3 big draft horses in there. I'm just not going to stop as quickly as you think. But if you hire a friend or just someone that's making a run and you put your horse on and something happens, you could be sued as part of, because...
Oh, gosh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. You're not with a commercially insured hauler.
And that really complicates things because you are giving money to somebody
Yes.
that is doing a little under table gig.
Yeah. And sadly for us that, those of us that are doing this legally, it's tough because, we're probably going to charge more than someone that's just making a run or offering to do it out of the kindness of their heart. But it's because of the insurances that we carry and the rigors we put our equipment through to make sure it's safe.
Oh, gosh, yeah, I know. But I like watching you and Mary online and the number of times you're in and out of a shop. Just, hey, my truck or my trailer just didn't feel right this run, and just to have it paid to check out.
Absolutely.
Like how many times I go, what was that sound? I'll be fine. I'll worry about it 2 times from now. And look, I just recently had all my brakes seized on my trailer.
Yeah, it's
But
amazing.
they fell off.
And especially this time of year when you have all that salt and sand and grime under your trucks and trailers, like it's just something that you have to be really cognizant of.
And I take my trailer, and every single year I have it inspected, and I have everything done proper to it, and my brakes still fell off my trailer.
Yeah.
Fell off, wedged themselves, and locked the wheels.
And you hope that, everybody that has a truck and trailer does, but they don't. But who's to say that's not the person you just saw online that was, hey,
Right.
I'm making a quick run to Kentucky, you know, if you want to throw your
Right.
horse on with me, you know, and they get in an accident, and now you have.
When
this
was the last time they
huge-
checked their floors and,
Yeah.
you know, make sure your horse doesn't fall
Yep.
from the floor of their
And now
trailer.
you, as the horse owner, is part of that suit because they don't have commercial insurance. So it's something to really think about.
Or you pass them on the road and the horse heads are sticking out of the tree.
And my hands up on the side of my head going, I
I actually like. There's a Facebook group that I'm on. You're probably on it too. The taller group there, where they respond to horses that get decapitated. from that.
Yes.
And you know, like, okay, this happened. Now what do you do? Because you know, their whole thing is how do you get the horse out? What could have been prevented? You know, and what was the rescued effort? You know, that's what that group does. And I'm just like, just put the window up. Don't put the grill up, please. Put the grill up.
Just, this is really easy.
You don't want your horse decapitated. Keep it inside.
Well, I just think of their big eyes and like all the stuff flying through the sky. You know, like I worry about my dog hanging her head out the window.
Yeah.
You know. But as far as being professional, you know, it's more that. I think it's, you know, having horse handling experience. You need to know, like, do they look okay while we're traveling?
Especially if you're doing emergency runs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cornell's 2 hours away. That's a long 2 hours with a sick horse.
Yeah, and especially when it's crappy weather. It's even a longer 2 hours.
So do you do cameras? Like, how do you know a horse is doing okay back there?
I do. I use a camera called Equine Eye. And they're just set up that it feeds right to my phone. So like if I'm at a stoplight or have a minute, I can just do a quick pull in, take a peek if it's, you know, not convenient to hop out at that point. But I generally like an emergency run from this general area, the Monroe Livingston area. I generally make one stop and just get in and actually lay hands on eyes and just take a quick look. The last few weeks has been rough with colics. I mean, our weather's been all over the board. I've had horses down in the trailer that, thankfully, as I'm pulling into Cornell, they're up in the trailer. And, you know, being able to peek in on them is very helpful. Even on the non-emergency trailers.
Is it you? I can't remember if it was me that trailered. I've been to Cornell so many times.
Right.
Various random things where just the trip to Cornell cured them. No, it might have been one of yours.
No doubt. Like I just, one of my most recent ones, they're like, oh, you know, the horse hasn't made any manure in like 36 hours. And I'm like, well, I just pulled into Cornell.
Ta-da! Or, you know, I've actually had the vet go, tourist, you know, you're going for surgery, have a nice day. By the time they show up, they're like, they're fine.
Yeah, they're good. It's all good.
Like, can I hire you just to drive around the block 3 times?
Yeah, I tell people, you know, I'll get calls from some of my regular clients. I have the vet coming, but they're on another emergency or there are 2 more emergencies in front of me. Do you want me to just come? We'll get loaded and go for a ride around the block or go for like 20 or 30 minutes while we're waiting for them to come and just see. I do have to charge you. It's still fuel and time, and the vet is still going to charge you to come out, but it's still going to be a lot less than Cornell.
A lot less than Cornell.
You know, and a lot less traumatic for everybody. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I have no problem doing that.
I gotta tell you, I was in a little bumpy, and then take the back roads. I think I've actually told you with my one thoroughbred mare coming to my house, who was coming back to my place, by the way, to be euthanized.
Yes.
Because she torsed, and I'm like, take every back road, take every railroad track, turn, you name it. She walked off that trailer and saved her own life.
Yeah, she's like, I'm good.
Can't believe it. Gotta love a trailer ride. All right, so let's talk about equipment. What do you use? I know you might have a couple of rigs set up. So what rigs do you?
So we have 2 setups together. We have an F250 and an F350. The F250 is generally hooked to a 2023 Hawk 2-horse. I love this trailer. It's like my older Adam that I had when we got all of this started.
So is it a bumper pull or?
This is the bumper pull. It's generally my Cornell trailer unless I need the box or my local trailer. But the nice thing about it is even though it's a 2-horse, it has the front offload. So I don't have to back anyone off. I can walk them off the front. Makes it super helpful for neurologic horses that aren't going to back real confidently or safely. Makes for great I don't have a driveway, we're loading at the road, I can put that side ramp, on either trailer up and get them in. I can back them into the slot if I have to. It just makes for some safer options. I always think, worst case scenario, if I ever had to unload for an emergency reason on the side of the road, I'd rather
have a side exit.
I'd rather come out the side of the trailer than back them into traffic. Yeah,
As somebody who actually blew a tire on a Pennsylvania highway, and as we all know, Pennsylvania does not believe in shoulders.
No, not
at all, period. Most terrifying point in my life, and I was like, holy crap, if I have to get these horses off the trailer, I'm screwed. I'm going to have to call somebody.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was only a mile from an exit that had a big, huge empty parking lot, and I linked that trailer to that parking lot.
Yep.
That was,
Yeah.
Thank you, Pennsylvania.
Oh, absolutely. So the second rig, we have an F-350, and that hauls generally, I have a 2+1 oversized Logan coach. Oversized, the box is just a few feet bigger than a typical 2+1. I was just finding that we're breeding bigger and bigger horses these days.
Speak for yourself. I like the little guys.
I know. Coming from somebody as tall as you, that makes me giggle. But, some of these brood mares, I'm like, holy cow. Like, they got some big moms and babies going in that box stall.
Kim and I did that trip, and she's got a hawk, and when she was doing hers, they're like, do you have any friends with short horses? She goes, yes, make sure I have adjusted it enough. She was like speaking to me, and she gets a kick out because her horse is 17 hands something. And then Pete's like 15. She's like, look at the front bars.
Yeah. And that brings up a really good point. Like, when people talk to me about hiring me to take their horse, and I'll say, well, what size is the horse? And they're like, well, it's a miniature pony. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to bring the big trailer. And they're like,
why?
And I'm like, because it's going to be too little to go in the straight stall.
I need a box to put it in. And you do. You walk up this little teeny tiny thing into this big trailer.
I love when I have like, those little micro mini something, and I open the side of, a 30-foot trailer, and it's like, oh, hey.
Sup? Yeah, but you know what? The littles have the personality to fit that box.
Absolutely. Ponies are... Ponies and minis are something else. Halflingers are my nemesis, and sorry to everybody that has a halflinger, but they're always the clowns in the trailer. I had one day that I was coming through. I think I was in Penn Yan when I actually had problem number 1. So I picked the horse up in Syracuse, and I forget where I was going, but I was coming down like 14, and I don't know. I was that way. And all of a sudden I had the 2-horse trailer, and I felt it wiggling around, and I looked in the camera, and I'm like, what the heck is going on back there? And I get back there, and he's got his front legs up over the chest bar, and he's just hanging out eating hay, and I open the side door, and he looks at me like, oh, hey, what's up? So I'm like, what are you doing? So where I pulled over was a fire department parking lot, and thankfully there were a couple guys there. They had just had a run, and they were cleaning up, and I'm like, can you guys give me a little hand? I just need some strength when I encourage him to back off the bar. I'm going to have to drop the bar, and then I rearranged his ties. I thought, like, I'm going to cross tie you really low. Thought I was good. About an hour later, I feel him fiddling back there again, and he had, like, completely broken the crown off his halter. And he's sitting there with the nose piece and the cross ties hanging, but there's
nothing over the top.
Nothing over the top, and I'm like... I don't think I went.
What are you doing?
And the funny thing was, I was taking him on a trial, and like 3 weeks later, I get a call. Can you go get the pony and return him? He's too much for this owner. And I'm like, you're going to the box stall.
That explains it. I knew that was happening.
You're just getting romper room in the box stall. It's all you, bud.
Well, I think we talked about special features with all the ramps and everything, and just box stall versus straight stall.
Yeah.
Safety protocols, like. When you're looking to pick up a horse, are there safety things that you run through? How do you inspect your rig? What is it that you're looking for? Because I imagine you do this per run.
Yeah. So definitely like the biggest thing, and even per run per day. So like after the rig's been parked all night, if I'm at a hotel for a night, the biggest thing I look at obviously is the hitch. Like, is it still connected?
people mess with things.
Well, right. And, I've been in some iffy areas after offloading into some cities, and you just don't know. So, the biggest thing I do is kind of run through the hitch and just make sure that that's still completely, everything safely hooked, hitched, and, okay. But then, obviously, lights, it's kind of a standing joke with my Fords. My one truck loves to blow through headlights, and it's a pain right in the neck because you have to about take the whole front of the truck off to change the headlights.
Of course. Make it easy.
So, like, one blew, we replaced it, and then, like, 2 weeks later, the opposite one blew, and it was just, like, chaos, and it's gotten to be a joke. So people will pass me that know about this, and they'll say, you have a headlight out, and I'm like, no, I don't. And I don't, but they just know that, that's kind of my thing with these trucks. So, obviously, your headlights, brakes, the trailer brake, just running through fluids, is everything okay? But
The truck is your livelihood, so I'd imagine you're going to pay attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, you figure you're running down the road with $100,000+ worth of equipment plus your cargo.
I used to work on a racetrack, and I found it fascinating that the horses were worth more than me.
Right.
Right. I'm sure you have got clients where you're just going, this animal that I just picked up is worth more than this entire rig. And those rigs, truck and trailer, are not cheap. I'm sure they're running between $100,000 and $200,000 for the whole setup all together. And then put an animal on board.
Yeah.
Are there any national guidelines or federal guidelines you have to follow for doing horse transport?
Yeah, so the FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carriers, they have some requirements for size and weight, and I am lucky right now. I am just under needing a CDL. So there's me, and then I have another guy that drives for me and another woman that drives for me, very per diem part-time basis. Keith, who many of you have met, he does have a CDL, but my rigs are just under the weight that we don't need them. If I were to go up to a dually or a little bit heavier of a trailer, I would have to go and get it. It's no big deal. It's the CDL test is not. It's just one of those things. It's like a non-issue. But right now, it keeps us nice. We're under 26,001, I think it is. It's an odd number. We're under that weight, so we're good. But we do have to maintain all that reporting of, have we changed out our rigs? Are they still under the weight? And they will check them at DOT stops.
And that's the thing is, your commercial vehicle, you have DOT numbers, you are required to stop at those flashing lights, at the next intersection, stop over type of thing.
And you best have, your triangles and your flares and your fire extinguisher and all your horse paperwork. Everyone that gets mad at me saying, can you just run a horse over the line into Pennsylvania? I still need a health certificate.
So let's talk about health certificates. So what if you were running across, we'll keep it in the country, we'll say running across state lines, what does an owner need to transport a horse across state lines?
So minimally, we need a negative Coggins and a health certificate, or some people you'll hear the term CVI, Certificate of Veterinary Inspection, to cross any state lines.
Do you know how long those are good? I think they're 30 days, if I remember.
Health certificates, yes. Coggins are interesting, and you have to look because the states that are connecting, they're generally a year, but some of them they want them within 6 months. Some of them are 2 years. Every state's a little different.
And some of them I learned are like calendar year versus 1 year from the date that you did it. So congratulations, you got your Coggins in November. Come January 1, it's invalid.
Yeah, absolutely. The other fun one is Canada.
For international, because you do international.
Yeah, I do. I will go into Canada. It's not my favorite thing.
We love Canada. We just don't love coming back.
Yeah, they're really strict on paperwork. So during COVID, when they shut the border down, unless you were a commercial vehicle, I had a lot of people hiring me to go because they couldn't go up personally and pick up a horse, or maybe they had a broodmare up there that needed to return, or whatever the case may be. So my first trip up during COVID, I went up, had no problem crossing into Canada. They asked me, do you have everything you need to come back? Do you know how you're doing? Yep, no problem. I get back to the border. I'm talking to the U.S. Customs agent, and he looks at the paperwork and he said, you're missing the birth date on the international health certificate, and the Coggins were off, and something was weird, and we're not going to let you through. And the police escorted me, customs police, lights and sirens, back over to go into Canada. So then now I'm with the Canadian agent, and he says, what's your destination? And at this point, like, I'm doing the nervous laugh, half cry, and I'm like, Rochester, New York. And he's like, well, you're in the wrong lane. I'm like, I know. It was like something so stupid. And we had to call, because you have to broker horses that go in and out of Canada because they're a commodity. And everyone wants their piece of the financial pie.
Yes.
So, I had a client yesterday say, hey, I'm looking at a horse in Canada. I seem to be able to get more bang for my buck buying a horse in Canada. I said, well, hold up.
Time out. Wait till you hit customs.
I said, so when somebody hauls a horse, we need to broker them. And I said, the broker is going to ask for a bill of sale, and it's going to be a percentage that you're going to have to pay at customs. And, that might change things.
Yes.
So, having paperwork in order is a huge priority. And it's a pain, yes, but it's required, so we do it. And also, if your horse is on with other horses, you want those other horses to be healthy.
Yeah.
They're in a stressful situation. They're being transported. And that's where,
your immune system has problems, and you don't want things flaring up.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just one of those things, you got to do it.
So we're on to the actual horses.
Yeah.
We show up to the place. We got all the paperwork in hand. We're ready to go. Walk me through getting that horse on a trailer.
Well, first off, can I just say, like, this time of year, it is super helpful if you know I'm coming to have your driveway plowed and salted.
Man, you take all the fun out of it. Well, I know, like, for me, like, my driveway is a quarter mile long, and you aren't turning around there. And usually I would, if I
turn everyone around in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, this time of year, I don't plow my driveway, and I'd be like, dude, we're loading at the road.
Yeah, and that's fine if you tell me that and you're comfortable with, having your horse at the road.
That's where that side ramp comes in handy.
Really handy. Yeah, really handy.
It's also helpful to tell you what side to pull on. Am I going south, and that's where the side ramp's going to be? Or I'm like, hey, pull north, and that's where that side ramp's going to be. So,
and there's, I'm going to ask questions like, what's your driveway like? Am I backing in? Am I going to the road? Can I turn around? I don't, even with the big trailer, if I just have a spot to do like a 3-point turn, I can generally whittle that thing around almost better than the little trailer some days.
Well, yeah, you can drive right underneath it practically.
Yeah, you can just really turn those. It's amazing to me some days how much easier it is to wedge the big trailer into places than the little trailer. But I can get those trucks through a lot. They're strong trucks. But when I say, hey, can you plow and salt? If your horse is going to throw any bit of a temper tantrum about loading, you don't want them doing it on ice. You don't want them falling.
All the injuries.
And I don't want to get hurt doing it. Let's be real honest here. Like, it's my safety and your safety and the horse's safety. And, it's one thing if I'm coming for a colic in the middle of the night, but if I'm coming.
Have you ever gotten to the point where you're like, your horse doesn't get on the trailer, we're scrapping this? Like, do you have a time limit?
Yeah, there's been a couple times. I don't have a time limit, but if it's more than a half an hour, I charge a little more onto the time for loading. At that point, you start to feel like you're kind of doing some training.
Yeah.
You kind of go into a different role, like you're putting a different hat on for a little bit. The other thing I'm not opposed to doing is you saying, hey, I got this horse. I haven't taken it anywhere. Will you come over and just do a loading session with me?
Okay. That's actually helpful.
It's helpful because the sad times when a horse won't load is when it's emergency and they need to load. And the one thing I hate hearing horse owners say is, well, I don't plan on ever taking my horse anywhere. You never know.
No.
You have a barn fire, you have a big injury, you never know. So just put it into part of your training, and one of the biggest things you can do is put a tarp or put a plank or put something down and have the horse walk onto it.
Yeah.
Put your feet
Pallet.
where I want that.
Pallet, 1 or 2 pallets, and those big rubber mats.
Yeah.
Have at it. That's like,
Yep.
boom, done.
Just follow me where I need you to go. And the other thing is for me to be there early. If you have time, they'll do it quickly. If you don't have time, they're going to sense that and they're going to fight you. So having a little bit of time to just say, okay, no big deal, we're going for a ride, they're generally going to get on a lot easier.
Nice. What other factors will influence your pricing outside of the obvious of distance?
So I used to, up until this year, actually, I was charging mileage. And then I was having a conversation with my brother, who's kind of like my business set of ears lately. And we decided that, charging by the hour is probably a better idea for reasons like that. Generally I can give you a really good idea based on Google Maps or Garmin, or, I can pretty much tell you that this is what it costs.
Tell you when you get to Cornell and there's 6 trailers in front of you.
Right. Or
what's your time?
Construction. Like, it's not my fault or your fault, but it's still time, and it's probably going to put me behind for the next pickup or the next delivery or some other things that are huge factors. When I go to New York City, to JFK, or to Long Island, the George Washington Bridge costs me $115 to cross each way.
Oh my God.
So
I had no idea.
Yeah. Things like that. And it's stuff that, I've learned along the way.
So, if you have to cross that bridge, is that a cost that you...
Yeah, I factor it in.
You're like,
quote.
hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't be driving here if it wasn't for this trip.
And, when I tell people, people say, hey, can I get a quote for this? Okay, sure. I'm going to give you the worst case scenario. Your horse is the only horse on this job. If I get other horses either going in the same direction or on the way back, which is the goal,
Right, you don't want to run an empty trailer.
No. Obviously that's going to decrease your price, and it's going to depend on everybody's point A and point B. Yep. It's just going to all factor in, and I kind of will let you know when we get close to the date. But a lot of things I've seen, just watching some of the forums on Facebook and things, the horse hauling, a lot of scammers.
There's bargain basement of 50 cents a mile.
And how are they doing it?
Nope.
Yeah, between the price of diesel and DEF fluid and oil changes and tires and
easy pass fees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's toll roads from everywhere.
Yeah.
That, and some of these people are running. When I got Pete from St. Louis. He took an overnight to get to my place and dropped him off at 4:00 in the morning, right? And it was a crew of 2 or 3 guys, and they were taking shifts, and who was sleeping in the back seat just so they could drive overnight.
Just keep driving, yeah.
So that's all got to get factored in.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance cover. What does your insurance cover?
So a lot of haulers will do different things. I have both commercial insurance and horse liability insurance. With horse liability, you can do a very comprehensive or a very limited. The commercial is going to cover a lot of things like I get in an accident, I get, this happens, that happens, and your horse is on my trailer. Like I talked about before, if you hire somebody that doesn't have commercial insurance, you could be liable for some of those costs. It could
be something as simple as
I hit a deer.
You hit a deer, or the horse gets loose, and the horse is now running amok.
Yeah,
on the highway.
Yeah, and so that sometimes or usually is covered under liability insurance. So I also have a equine hauling limited liability. So something like that happens. A loose horse, a horse gets ill or injured on the trailer.
They do make really good videos on Facebook, by the way, to watch a horse just running down a Texas highway.
Oh yeah,
but not for.
Yeah,
tailoring.
it's crazy. And so many things. They're flight animals, so something happens. It's just going to amp them up and game on.
Yeah, and they're fast.
Yeah,
hence the horse racing industry, right? Which you're very familiar with. Where are we down? I think we touched on this one very close as we wrap things up here. Best preparations a horse owner can do outside of, like, we covered practice with your horse. We covered please shovel your driveway. Let me know what direction we're going. Anything else that a horse owner should have prepped and ready to go?
For big trips, well, really for any trip, I don't like to grain horses a lot. When I take horses and we're going to have layovers, they generally just get as much hay as I can shove into them on the trailer and at the layover.
Is the hay something that you're providing or you're picking up from them?
Either. I always have it, but if the owner wants to provide it, if they have a picky horse, if they have a horse with no teeth and they need something besides soaked hay, like if they're getting wet cubes or whatever, generally the owner will provide it. And the layover barns generally have it as well. But again, it depends on the horse and the owner, like what their preference is.
Can I get a horse that just will not drink water unless it's mine?
Yeah. And that's, that's a big thing to think about. Like a lot of times my water jugs that I carry in the trailer, like I'll fill them at the farm where I pick up the horse just because of that. Well water's different, city waters are different, everything is, and they're so picky on stuff like that.
They are.
The only time I really grain them during travel is if they need some sort of medication, and I will, give them a handful or two just to get whatever we need to get in them.
So that's actually a question I was going to ask, because I know I'm a person that I believe in omeprazole. Let's get that stomach taken care of, because ulcers are the last thing I want to work with. If we're doing an overnight trip, are you comfortable giving a medication to a horse?
Yep, absolutely. I won't do anything IV or IM. There's just more liability to that. But definitely giving any kind of oral medication is fine. And for the longer trips or a younger or older or no nervous traveler, I will always recommend protecting their gut as much as you can. Another big question I get asked is leg wraps and blankets.
I've had some transporters that they were obsessed with wrapping the legs.
Yeah.
And I had others where they're like, at your own will.
Right. So, most of us that have been in the horse world for any period of time know that leg wraps are a blessing and a curse. They can totally damage a horse's legs just as easy as they can protect them. If your horse has never had any kind of leg wraps on, the first time that they're going on my trailer is not the time to do this. That's something that should be practiced with them, like when they're stalled for a period of time, or, when there's not that stress of the trailer ride. Not the first time they're getting in a trailer for a, 10-hour run or whatever. Because the thing is if I'm not going to a layover, there's not a great place for me to get to them to re-wrap if something comes loose or something's too tight or, whatever the case may be. There's not really a safe way for me to get under them in the trailer and fix that. And kind of the same goes with blankets. Both of the trailers I have are insulated. And yes, if there's one horse in them, they're not going to be crazy hot, but there's also windows and I can adjust temperatures based on how the horse looks. I'm fine with shipping coolers, but again, don't give me your weanling in a blanket. No.
But they look so cute.
They do, and they look, it looks very professional when you walk off all wrapped up. And I am not mocking anyone that does. If you want your horse wrapped, if you want to wrap it, that's all you. But I don't want to take that risk of your horse, fidgeting with a leg wrap or getting hung up on a blanket strap.
Look,
I can't watch the camera the whole time I'm driving.
The halflinger in its cute little wrap. I could imagine that. Let's see. We get the legs over the bar.
Yes.
We clip the. Let's just clip or halter on something random.
Yeah.
And get the breast, thing on your blanket clipped to something else.
Yes.
It sounds like a delightful time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's you hear a lot of swearing coming out of my mouth at that point, and
Like fiddlesticks and fun wrappers.
yes. And oh my God, what did you do?
I can tell from experience with you that you're amazing when the person on the other end of the phone is nowhere near their own horse. Is relying on the verbiage of their farm sitter that goes, hey, your horse just ain't looking right.
Right.
And you're trying to coordinate this while on the road going, you know what? I don't care what's happening. I don't care the cost. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to a wedding, for crying out loud. I don't have time for this nonsense. And they call my vet going, get your butt there, call you.
Yeah.
And like,
Everybody go.
I don't know what's happening, but we're just going to Cornell.
But the thing, Lindsay,
Oh,
that
and by the way, it's a mare with a foal.
yes,
Have they been on a trailer?
we appreciate about you and people like you is we're like, well, it's one of Lindsay's horses, so it's gonna get on the trailer and all will be fine.
Everybody asks me, like, how do you get your horses to do that? I'm like, I just expect them to.
Yeah, it's practice.
Like, and that's the thing. I do.
training.
I'm like, I spend the time when they're young, and I just stand there, and I don't get on the trailer. I'm not the type of person that walks on the trailer going, come on, honey, get on the trailer. I'm like, no, get your butt on the trailer. I ain't getting on there, you get on there, you know? And I will stand there until they make the decision to get on the trailer. Good job, now get off.
Yeah.
Now get back on, now get off, now get back on.
You know, it's we don't know. Like, you know, there's places where I've picked up. I was way up in New England one time, and I get there, and there's not really anybody to help me except maybe one lesson kid. And this horse was like, no, I'm not getting on a trailer. And I'm like, I just drove all the way up here for somebody in Rochester that bought this horse up in, I think I was in Maine.
Yeah.
And it was an hour process getting this horse on the trailer. And I'm thinking, But with that said, my mare is a horrible, horrible loader. And she's like 16 years old. My baby loads better. And my big guy, he just self-loads. But there's nothing worse than when the shipper's horse doesn't want to get on the trailer.
Like, what are you going to do?
You can see it in their face.
Yeah.
Like, there are some that are terrified and some that are legitimately terrified. They've had an accident. They've had something happen. And that's just a lot of on and off and short trips around the block and on and off and short trips around the block and over until they, like, erase the bad from their mind.
And even my own horses. You say, like, oh, it's one of Lindsay's that'll get on. Like, I've sold horses before who unfortunately had a medical issue, had to go and spend extended times at a veterinary office, and then just, you know, that experience traumatized them to the point they're like, no, I'm never getting on a trailer again because something bad happened.
I think the biggest thing is you know, like, having just some calmness. Like,
You can't get mad.
the minute that we get amped up, they're like, they check out. And being able to kind of read their face, there is a time where you have to call it. There is a time.
Well, that's why I was
sometimes.
wondering. I'm like, where's your butt?
You
'Cause
can
usually,
see it.
like, anything over an hour, it's not happening.
Yeah,
Like,
I watch their eyes, and you can see when they have just checked out. It's kind of like when you see a sick horse and you know that it's time. There's just a look in their eye where they're done, and no matter what you do, I mean, you could try and beat that poor thing into the trailer, and you're just not going to. And I'm just not going to do that. Like, I will be firm with a horse, especially one that wants to kill me loading. You know, I've had
You can be firm, but not mean.
firm and fair.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the way that we all should train and handle our horses is, you know, we're little compared to them. We have to have a level of understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, sometimes one of the hardest things that I've come across is the emergency transport, and knowing what your horse will load easier on makes it so much easier for us as the shipper and your veterinarian when they're making that middle of the night call. If you know your horse won't want to step up, you need to have someone in your back pocket that has ramps. If you know that they won't go into anything but a stock trailer, you need to have someone in your back pocket that has a stock trailer. Like, some of them are just more comfortable based on what they were trained in or what they're usually on. And it's just really good to know that at an emergency time, if you board your horse, it's really good for your barn owner to know what they'll get on. Like in your case, you're at a wedding in Indiana and one of your horses needs to go. What do you tell your farm sitter? Like, who do I call? Like, who, you know, what kind of trailer is this horse going to get on?
You were my first call. Like, I got Tubi. I'm like, I knew your trailer. I knew what setup you had, and that's the thing. If you are the type of person you don't own this, talk to your vet.
Yeah.
Listen to this podcast. We're going to discuss how to contact you here in a minute.
Yeah.
Figure out, call these people. Hey, let's run through an emergency situation. It might cost me a couple, bucks to do this.
Yeah.
But that security is
Peace of mind.
Oh my gosh,
Huge.
it's so worth it.
It's huge. And it's
If you've
for all of
never,
us.
yes, if you've
For all of
never
us.
been in that emergency situation, you can't think that.
No.
You can't. Your
No.
brain does not function. You are so worried about a problem that you can't think of the logistics. You are the logistics queen.
And don't be like offended if I was telling you a story earlier before we started, where I actually had the owner just step away. And it's the separation. Like, yes, I feel bad for this horse. I hate to see it in this condition, but I don't have the attachment. This isn't the horse that's in my backyard. So step away, let me load, and then I will let you kiss your horse on the nose or whatever, whatever you want to do.
Hey, but you do have puppy therapy.
I do have puppy therapy, and it's funny because a lot of people are starting to, there are a few people in some of the bigger barns I go to that they can't remember my name, but they'll say, the shipper, the woman with the curly hair and the puppy. That's like my trademark.
Look, we're in a stressful situation. Take my dog.
Yeah, she's the therapy dog, go with her. She really is a therapy dog. She's like, she's a golden retriever, so she's happy all the time. Everything in her world is unicorns and glitter and rainbows.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking with me tonight. I appreciate it. Tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you if they do have an emergency, or who they should talk to if it's their vet, or should they contact you directly?
Yep. So my phone number, 585-295-3553. You can call or text. If I don't answer, sometimes the best way is to just text 911 horse or something. If I don't answer,
Not to text 911, but to text
my phone. And that'll kind of tell me, like, I have to pick up now. If I don't answer, it's maybe because I'm loading a horse or riding my horse or, just doing something where I can't quite get to the phone at that moment. The vets in the area all have my number. I think on speed dial some weeks.
They're talking to you and Mary. I swear there's sometimes where I think both of you are in the parking lot at the same time.
Oh, I know. We were joking one day with Dr. Liebeck at Genesee Valley about, girl power. It was all the women vets on the road and all the women haulers on the road. But there is a third hauler, and I'm just pitching this out because he's legal.
Okay.
Chris Anderson, he's out of
I've seen the name,
Shortsville.
yes.
And he's amazing. I would put any of my horses on his trailer any day. I do some work with him now and then. We ping pong jobs off of each other, just depending on who's heading in what direction. So between Chris and Mary and myself, we try to get you if we can. We can't always, but we'll try and get you if we can.
And I've had folks actually post on the Rochester Trail Riders page, help, I need an emergency horse now. And I've tagged you, I've tagged Mary, I've tagged anybody I know of that is legal transport to Colquitt. And I think both of you guys, you've hit them up and off you go.
Yep.
You're amazing stewards, and I appreciate
Thank you.
the services that you provide our area. I think
We
very much.
appreciate this service. It's good to get all this information out to the horse community.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. You have yourself a good evening.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That wraps up today's show. I'm going to make sure that all of the professional transport names that you heard in this podcast are available in our show notes. And if you are part of our Facebook group of Rochester Trail Riders, please know that any ads that I approve on there for equine transportation have been vetted, and they are insured and have all the licensing and all the requirements they need to haul your horses safely. If you find this information useful, please leave some feedback. I'm thinking I might give the next 3 people a Rochester Trail Riders patch if you leave an actual review of this episode on your favorite podcast. So Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Amazon or wherever you guys listen. Leave a review, let me know, and I'll send you a patch to the first 3 people that do. Well, that wraps up today's show. As always, respect the trail, wear a brain bucket, and leave no trace at your trailer site. Happy trails.